Um, yes, as I was saying, it's very interesting to meet like this. We've had a very strange COVID, tumultuous time over the last 2 or 3 years, which really has inspired this kind of hybrid form of gathering, where in this instance we've got people from Hobart, we've got people from Melbourne, and we've also got people from Castlemaine, all meeting here, together on the side of this particular mountain, Kunyani, this mountain that is hosting our Zen practice, if you like, and has been hosting the very source or generative inspiration of Zen practice since before time even began. This mountain has been hosting us here. And as it's said in the Shodoka, I do not say this to confuse you. This great moment in which we have always sat is hosted by the mountain, is hosted here. And when Kirk and I were first actually talking about this talk, or the idea of coming together, meeting in a particular place, Kunyani, for this talk, one of the great themes that rose up and became very obvious to both of us, in fact, was the great theme of friendship, which is actually a very friendly, translation of the Sanskrit term Kalyana Mitra, a very important Buddhist term, in fact, Kalyana Mitra. And I think this theme of friendship, Kalyana Mitra, came up because, right through the entire sort of legacy or history of the Zen tradition has been this weave of people, people traveling the mountains and valleys and finding themselves sitting together, meeting together, taking up the way together. It's so central to our practice to not be taking up Zen as if it's some kind of siloed, private, aloof practice. It isn't. Zen practice only wakes up together. It only wakes up when we meet and live the intimacy of no other, realizing that there is no other. My life is your life is my life. We wake up to this fact. We wake up to this shared realization, the very realization of the Buddha, the very realization of any single one of us, the very realization of the mountain itself. That's why we're here. To realize this completely, without confusion and without resistance, but just wholeheartedly shared as friends. And I was interested to discover a very interesting encounter, actually, between Shakyamuni Buddha and Ananda. And I know that Ananda is a great friend of Kirk's, and I'm sure, Kirk, you'll be speaking about your mate, Ananda. But there's a beautiful little passage that's shared in one of the old sutras, the Upada Sutta. And it goes like this. Ananda actually enthusiastically, we're told, declares to the Buddha, this is half of the holy life, he says. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie. This is half the holy life. And the Buddha says, don't say that, Ananda. Don't say that. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. It is the whole, he's saying, of the practice, this practice of friendship. How interesting that this is, we may think that we're sitting somehow alone when we're facing the wall, but we're so profoundly sitting together. We're so profoundly experiencing the true intimacy of what I said before is no other. And when we can genuinely realize this no other, this no gap between your life and my life, then we can actually walk the path in the way that Thich Nhat Hanh actually advised us to walk the path. He actually just said, the path is other people. The path is other people. I wonder if you can hear both the celebration of the uniqueness of each one of us and also the genuine sense of no other at all. There's also a lovely moment in the Dhammapada, which many of you, I'm sure, will have read or heard from. And it's a recommendation of the Buddha to, well, really wake up to this no other, wake up to this friendship, which of course goes beyond having only friendships with people. This is friendships with rocks and flowers and mountains and streams, friendship all the way through. But he does actually draw our attention to how important it is to find friends on the path, you know, to be able to meet together in just the way that we're meeting now. And he says, if you find a person who is constant, awake to the inner light, learned, long-suffering, endowed with devotion, a noble person, then follow this good and great person, even as the moon follows the path of the stars. It's such a natural image of finding our resonance with those people that are endowed with devotion, who are learned, who are awake to their own inner light. And very importantly, I think here it says, and who are long suffering. It's not a point to be glossed over, this long suffering. You know, people that have lived genuinely and can admit to having lived genuinely, can admit to their own difficulties and share those difficulties. Be frank about the thorny path we actually walk together. When Thich Nhat Hanh says the path is other people, I can hear so many thorns there. It can be very hard, you know, in many ways to live intimately with other people. But to do so is to touch the depths of that long suffering, which is indistinguishable, finally, from great joy, great connection, true intimacy. So this friendship, yes, becoming friends of the way, the entire record of Chan, as I've said, or of Zen, is full of these encounters between friends of the way, fellow travelers on the path of awakening. There are teachers and students, of course, but there are also these, you know, true Sangha friendships with encounters that don't happen, you know, in a formal setting, but happen on the road, happen on the path. These are friends sometimes between young people and old people, or men and women, or lay and monk. You know, these friendships, you know, are celebrated right throughout the tradition, because friendship is the whole of the path. It's not just some side effect of a loving practice. It is the loving practice entirely. And perhaps before I hand over to Kirk to just, you know, flesh this out in a little bit more detail, or with a little bit more color, I might just share with you something that Dogen said about, you know, this Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We're always recognizing, you know, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha go together. In fact, they so much go together, they cannot be disentangled. from one another. Buddha is found in Dharma. Dharma is found in Sangha. Sangha is found in Buddha. It's all right to pass them out individually, but finally, they all touch. They're all great friends. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And I like that Dogen says this. He says, you take refuge in the Buddha because he's a great master. Can you hear that noble friend here? You know, that the one awake to the great light. You take refuge in the Buddha because he's a great master. You take refuge in the Dharma, you know, the law, all things, one thing becoming another, all things passing quickly away. Emptiness, emptiness, fullness, fullness, the Dharma. You take refuge in the Dharma because it's good medicine. This heals us back into reality, back into the genuine life of each other. Heals us back in. Good medicine, this Dharma. And then he says you take refuge in Sangha because it is an excellent friend. I love this phrasing, excellent friend. We're excellent friends here. It's so unlikely, in fact, you know, to be able to meet in this way. There's an excellence to that. So why wouldn't we want to live up to that excellence? Why wouldn't we want to be able to allow that excellence to shine bright, be clear, be just as natural as that moon tracing the stars, as the Buddha puts it? To be here and to live this excellence is most natural. And I suspect that might be somewhere that Kirk can take us, you know, right into the naturalness of this great matter of friendship. So over to you, Kirk.
I'm reminded of a saying by Gary Snyder. You're talking about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And he says, I get it taking refuge in the Buddha. I get it taking refuge in the Dharma. Why go to hang out with all these other turkeys? And it can seem that way, you know. People are so difficult, as you said, and you know, why do we have to deal with them and so forth? I was reminded when I was thinking about Kynan and we were talking a little bit ahead of time about how we were going to proceed with this talk, and one of the things we decided very purposely to do is not to foreshadow too much or even discuss too much what we were going to say, with the sense that what arises out of you know, a frank and honest discussion is to allow ourselves to go into the unknown together and to not forecast too much what we're going to say or who's going to say what and so forth. And that's I think a very important part of what we're talking about when we're talking about spiritual friendship, is this idea of being willing to open to the unknown, and to be willing to be, as you said, Kynan, before, to be frank with each other about what we do know and what we don't know and where we actually are. And that's, you know, we can talk about friendship in a number of ways. We can talk about friendship sort of in a sentimental way. We can talk, you know, in terms of this is a good friend in a lot of ways, and someone we'd love to hang out with, we can trust and so forth. Spiritual friendship is a practice that requires us to be more than just sentimental with each other, I think. You know, Kalyana, Mitra means friendship, as you said, and Kalyana, that sense of a noble friendship, a spiritual friendship, a sacred friendship, is not so much about being sentimental about friendship, but it requires us to be open and honest and, you know, on the ground as we are, without holding anything back, without trying to be something we're not. One of the only times I heard about Mayazumi Roshi getting really angry at one of his students is they were sort of fudging a little bit about what they knew and didn't know in front of someone who'd come into the temple. And he said, no, it's very important that we be completely honest. You're not knowing something is more important than, and your honesty and frankness about who you are is more important than any other factor in terms of what we can share with the public. So that aspect of friendship is something I think I'd like to explore with us. We'd like to explore today with you, and what this looks like as a practice. And that honesty and willingness to move together into the unknown is very important. Above my desk, I have this little picture that shows two, and I've forgotten, forgive me, it's a very famous picture, I know, but I've forgotten who painted it. But it shows a log over a great chasm, and there's a figure of two blind men with sticks making their way together across this chasm, on tapping their way. You got it there? There we go. Who is that? Is that Hakuin's painting?
Yes, it's Hakuin.
Yeah, right. I knew that. See, I'm lying already. Yeah, so yeah, and you know, in a way, right now, Kynan, you and I are two blind men tapping our way across this bridge here, and that's both terrifying and beautiful. We won't really see the full potential for joy and pain at the same time unless we open ourselves to that frankness and true encounter. Thinking, you know, just to be really open in a non-sentimental way to friendship is to you're instead of putting your loyalty to a niceness, to an image maybe that you're trying to manage, you're putting your loyalty to the whole field of what is happening. You and I are blind, making our way into the unknown. Or as Suzuki Roshi said, making our way in the dark with fingers and toes alive. And that's what's truly to be alive in that sense of how we practice friendship. This idea that we make our way down the path, as we walk the path of Zen, as we walk the path as blind men tapping on a log bridge across a chasm, we notice over time, as we walk this way, that we are accompanied along this way on every side by many things. It might, you know, first occurred as we're accompanied by our own thoughts and memories and emotions. And it may seem for a while that we have to clear some of them away to make the path straight, and you know, get rid of some of our fears and anxieties, our jealousy and our rage, and push them away in order to be pure and on the path. But slowly over time, those aspects of ourselves that we want to push away, we realize are part of the path. They are the mud out of which the lotus arises. They are the path itself. And it's the same thing with people and events, or the weather, or politics, or whatever. Some things we like and some things we don't like, and it may seem like we have to manage these too, and move them out of the way to make the path more straight. But true encounter with the way, just like true friendship, we notice how very busy we can get trying to manage the situation into a form that we like, to understand things, to categorize them, to fix them, to change our friends for the better, to change our partners for the better, categorizing, ignoring them. And that's a very busy, buzzing energy that we need to maintain with this. True, as we walk this path, and we learn, sometimes by accident, to let go of the management, to let go of this sense of trying to engineer a certain type of experience or a certain kind of friendship. All of a sudden, we notice in that open space that arises when we let go of that buzzing energy, the world approaches us, and the sound of a bird song reaches straight into our heart, and the rain on the roof ahead above us all of a sudden becomes our own skin. This managing mind is very important, and we can talk about that maybe later in the conversation. But there's a warmth and intelligence that we can notice in that is able to manage what is outside and inside, but we can't let it take over who we are. And we start to notice that these thoughts of mine are not my personal thoughts, but they're the same. They are in that field of you and me. They're in that field in which we are both together. Both me and the raindrops, and me and Kynan, and you and all of us here in the Sangha, in this room, and Kananyi together. Gradually we start to see that it's all personal. It's all what accompanies us on the way. There is no path, no Buddha, without all this, every living being, every moment, every thought that arises. And this becomes more and more obvious as we go along. So Kynan and I talked about maybe as an illustration of this idea of friendship. And Kynan, I just want to pause here. What would you fix about what I said? Get me straight, oh master.
I think I'd like to invite you to proceed, because I'm very eager to hear about this case that you're potentially going to drop into this water.
Yeah. Okay. So this case comes from the entangling vines, and I know that actually some of you in Hobart will be familiar with this case, because I think I talked about it just recent in Hobart in me time, so like in the last year or so. But it's a Shangu's sweet olive blossoms, and it's about friendship in many ways. There's a Zen master and poet who are friends, and they hang out with each other. And one day, Shangu, who's a Zen master, who's a poet, was visiting Hui Tang, and they're talking, and he's talking about Confucius. Confucius at one point has said, my friends, do you think I'm hiding anything from you? In fact, I'm hiding nothing from you. And it's just the same with the great matter Zen. Do you understand this? So he's putting out an invitation to this field of encounter, to this field of where the what is in front of us is not the same thing, is not different from what is inside of us, where that we are accompanied, and in fact the way itself is what accompanies us. It's alive. In terms of Chow Cho being asked, what is meditation? It's alive. It's all alive. It's awakening. There is no place that is not reaching out to you, and as you are not reaching out to it. Do you understand this? He asks. I am hiding nothing from you. It's all right here. And I like the way when Shangu replies, he says, no, I don't understand this. And that's all. That's where we draw a line under that part of the conversation. And there's something about this aspect of the conversation where he could have, the Zen master, Hui Tang, could have pressed, could have preached, could have tried to get him to see, but he says, okay, that's where you are right now. That's just one of the qualities that often arises in the practice of Zen, but also in the practice of friendship, is just patience, to allow people to be as they are, to allow people to come forward as they are. And Hui Tang does that. Okay, you don't understand. But later on, some days later, we don't know, they're taking a walk up in the mountains, and they come to an area where there's a really pungent smelling plant, the sweet olive blossom, and it's just, very strong scent coming through the air. And Hui Tang asks again, do you smell the fragrance of the blossoms? And Shango says, yes, I do. And Hui Tang said, you see, referring back to the first conversation, do you see, I'm hiding nothing from you. And at that moment, the sweet olive blossoms reached into Shangu's heart. He understood. He woke up in a new way. And so I love one of the things that I like about this is this idea that again, he was just allowing him to ripen on his own time. He wasn't pushing him. He wasn't saying you have to be a certain way. Just wait until the moment was ripe. And do you see? I do see. All right. I'm not. The last part of this is just another example here, but I just want to pause here and just let us sit with that for a moment and looking at how this friendship is unfolding, how the friendship and the sense of the sweet olive blossoms unfolding, friendship and the universe. That what is happening in terms of intimacy, ripening, that what is happening in terms of awakening is not different from sweet olive blossoms or these two people in terms of their relationship together. They're of one thing. And just pausing here because I am aware that there's Kynan might want to have to say something here. Just,
No, I think it'd be great to open it up and just see if other people have got some responses.
can I just then finish
Yeah.
one last bit of this? Because there's a final thing later on. Um, uh, he was telling another master about this, and Xixing, master Xixing, uh, said to him about this idea of meeting and greeting and friendship. It says, "I'll die and you'll die someday. You know, someday you and I, this former, we're going to die, and we're going to end up." And that's a really important thing, I think, to mention in terms of friendship. One of the things about friendships is that there's you and me, but there's also a time when it's going to come apart. That there's a sense of coming together and coming apart that we have to recognize the empty side of friendship as well. And that's what this touches into in this the last part of this koan. He says, "I'll die and you'll die, and we'll end up burnt into two heaps of ashes. We will be cremated. And at that time, when we come apart, what is meeting at that time? At that time, where will we meet?" That might be a focus of our inquiry of where do we meet, where will we meet when even this thing comes apart. And he couldn't say anything about it at that time, but later on he woke up from a nap and he understood completely. And so when we meet, where will we meet together? Always meeting. What does it mean to meet together? So, Kynan, do you want to set the ball rolling for the inquiry?
Well, I might just underscore that beautiful point that you've just made there at the end, which is, you know, if we can all just feel our way into, you know, when we feel that we have genuinely met someone, something, some moment, you know, could be anything. But to have that experience of genuine meeting, full connection, you know, you know, no separation. Remember that we're always talking in Zen about this, you know, dissolving this artificial line that each of us seems so sort of eager to draw between me and you. But what about when that line falls away? What about when it dissolves? And it does. You know, we've all, in our own way, experienced this sort of thing. It's very interesting as friends to share, you know, when have you met? You know, when have you experienced that that genuine meeting, you know, that genuine falling away of the boundary between me and you in favor of actually the experience of me and you meeting completely. So, you know, this might be one way into responding to this koan that Kirk has brought forth. But of course, any one of these points of entry in the koan are, you know, the great thing about koans is they're like paintings. You can start anywhere. You can start in any corner. You can start with any brushstroke. You can start with any word in a koan. Anything that calls to you, any word that you feel like, you know, is knocking on your door, saying hello, wanting to meet you. You know, that's the door to walk through. So there's all sorts of things. You know, this no, I don't of Shangu. You know, this feeling of no, I don't understand. That might be a door to walk through. You know, this hiding nothing from you, hiding nothing, nothing hidden. That might be a way in. But also just this, where do we meet? And where have you met? What's the experience of meeting? actually like. And
And
maybe I'll,
perhaps also the trust that's required for you to open to this both terrible and wonderful aspect of life that is complete openness and complete friendship. How does
yeah,
that trust arise in you as well?